to episode 263 of the Various and Sundry podcast. I'm your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from the Vault Studio on the beautiful campus of Grace College and Grace Theological Seminary by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who is ready to get on the road again, John Scott Sloat.
Doc, how are you?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah? Sir, it's cold out today.
It is. It is. You're flying to, one would think, slightly warmer climates?
DC? Like I'll be in DC, I'll hit Delaware, and I'll get down to Roanoke. Maybe Roanoke's a bit warmer.
I would think so.
But I don't know. Last time I was in Roanoke, I was having breakfast in a Denny's, and the heat in the building broke. And so this guy and I are sitting there having breakfast, and we could see our breath in, I think it was a Denny's. Anyway, but yes, it was not good.
Okay.
It was not good.
Indeed. Yeah. So that's why we're actually recording on a Monday morning.
Yep.
As opposed to our normal Monday afternoon spot.
And classes start this week, right?
They do.
When do you teach first? I mean, you're not teaching today, obviously, just based
on
the attire.
Yeah. Classes don't start until Wednesday.
Okay.
And my first day of teaching is Thursday.
Okay. And what do you got Thursday?
So we've got Greek Exegesis 1.
Nice.
And New Testament Bible Exposition.
Nice.
So
that's great.
Yeah. That makes Tuesdays and Thursdays full days this semester, this session, but very enjoyable. So looking forward to that. If you would like to contact the show and find out more about John Sloat's travels or my teaching schedule, you can find us on X at V&S Pod. You can email the show, varioussandsundrypodcast@gmail.com. I think we're still on Facebook and YouTube, but I haven't checked in a while. So
okay.
There's that. I do know that we would like you to leave a 5-star rating and a review.
Yep, wherever you listen.
Yeah, whether it's Apple Podcasts or whether it's Spotify, Stitcher. I use Overcast.
I use Pocket Cast.
Okay, yeah. So wherever you're accessing the show, we'd love for you to leave a 5-star rating. That's crucial. Helps the algorithm. So, all right, John, let's talk a little sports.
Okay.
Let's start with some college football.
Okay, Friday night or Thursday night.
Well, let's start Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah, Thursday night, Notre Dame beat Penn State.
Yeah. The first half wasn't that entertaining,
but
the second half was very entertaining. Back and forth game, and you've got at the end, it's tied 24-all, and it looks like, Penn State gets the stop. They get the ball back, and you're thinking, maybe Penn State's going to either play for overtime because there wasn't a ton of time left on the clock, but, they've got this quarterback who supposedly is a potentially top 5, top 10 pick for the NFL draft this upcoming year. Side note, I think that's absurd. He's not nearly that good.
He'll probably end up on the Jets.
That's possible. Drew Aller for Penn State throws a terrible interception with about 45 seconds left. And Notre Dame moves the ball a little bit, kicks field goal, wins the game.
And I imagine the fine people at the college football playoff are very excited Notre Dame's in the
they're thrilled. They're thrilled.
They get every Catholic eye in the country on that game, right?
Yeah.
So they got to be thrilled about Notre Dame being in the final.
Yeah, hugely.
And when is that final?
Sadly, it's on a Monday night, so it's a week from today when we're recording, January 20th.
Okay. And then, do you want to talk about Friday's game at all? Or
we probably should.
It?
We probably should talk about it a little bit. Yeah. And then Friday, Ohio State played Texas.
In a good game.
Very good game.
How are you feeling about the Chip Kelly offense throughout that game?
Well, here's the thing. We made so many mistakes. I mean, the first drive, there could not have been a better start. We forced, I don't know if it was a 3-and-out, but forced Texas to punt pretty quickly, marched down the field, and the way Texas was playing defense, they basically had two safeties 20 yards away from the line of scrimmage and were like, you're not throwing the ball deep to Jeremiah Smith. We're just not going to let you do it. Even though Ohio State did try once and almost completed it. But so Ohio State had like a 9 or 10 play drive, just small chunks down the field, and punched it in and got up 7-0, and everything's looking good. Forced another punt from Texas, get the ball back, and we're thinking, man, this is exactly the script we've been using the last 2 games to blow people out. And a shockingly bad penalty by Travion Henderson, who after like a 1 or 2 yard run, like sort of pushed / almost punched a Texas player. And he's the legitimate believer, not one of these just like slap God talk onto things, but like he's a legit serious believer. So it was just stunning that he did something like that. Seemed totally out of character.
It was like a closed fist push sort of a thing.
Yeah. I mean, probably a legit penalty. I mean, probably. Anyway, and then the very next play, Ohio State runs a read option play where, it's like 2nd and, 24 or something like that. And Will Howard keeps the ball instead of handing it off to Quinshon Judkins, when if he'd have handed it off, Quinshon Judkins would have scored. Or at least he would have had to beat a safety about 12 yards down the field. So at least a big play.
It was a poor read.
Terrible decision. And so that just started this chain reaction of every time we got the ball back, our defense was playing great, shutting Texas out. Every time we got the ball back, we'd have one of these back-breaking penalties on the drive. And so that would force us to end up punting. And so we have all this momentum, but we're shooting ourselves in the foot. And then, Texas finally puts it together at the end of the first half. They score a touchdown with like 30 seconds left. Tie ball game. And now you're thinking, oh, no, like this is going to be a legitimate, hard-fought, tough football game. And then Ohio State draws up an amazing screenplay, and Travion Henderson scores a 75-yard touchdown to give Ohio State the lead back, which was huge. So, but then, I mean, the play that people are going to talk about, the plays, I suppose, are
it was first and goal.
The goal
right?
line stand.
Yeah.
Texas had the ball first and goal.
Down 7
with about 4 minutes left. And had the ball first and goal at the 1. And they try first down, run up the middle, no gain. The big sort of, not controversial, but just second down, they run a toss sweep wide, which Texas fans, of course, hated because it lost them like 7 yards.
Yeah, it got blown up.
And so now you're at 3rd and goal from like the 8. And 3rd down, pass deflected at the line of scrimmage, brings up 4th down. And then on 4th down, you've got game on the line. And Jack Sawyer makes one of the most legendary plays in Ohio State football history.
Strip sack. Ball bounces right into his hands.
Yeah, I mean, it's like he dribbled it. Like, honestly, that ball just bounced like right up into his hands. And ran it back, what was that, 85 yards or something for a touchdown.
I love it when a big man scores.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was, there's obviously a lot of talk if people watch the broadcast or people know, like, when Quinn Ewers started his football career at Ohio State, was there one semester, his freshman year. He and Jack Sawyer were roommates.
Right. I did read that. Yeah.
And so, and they're still on good terms. But huge play for Ohio State, seals the game. And
I'm sure there were some Ohio State fans calling for them to let Texas score. Let them score so we get the ball back. With enough time.
I don't think so, just because this is twice this year against Nebraska and Penn State. They had goal line stands where they did not give up points. When, I think Penn State had first and goal from, the 2.
Yeah.
4 plays, couldn't score. Nebraska had first and goal from, the 3. 4 plays, couldn't score. So there was enough of a history where I think Ohio State fans probably were like, we can trust our defense here to at least, give us a shot. And, so they're on to the national title game now.
Yeah, so it's Ohio State against Notre Dame. Again, the college football people, whoever they are thrilled.
Oh, in terms of ratings, it should be great.
I'm sure they're thrilled.
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame has a huge fan base, and Ohio State has arguably the largest alumni base. And if you look at like the most watched football games this regular season, over the last probably 2 or 3 years, they're consistently like if you look at like the top 10 most watched college football games each year, Ohio State's in the top 3 or 4. Got a couple games in the top 5 in that. Like they always draw big numbers. So it should, ESPN, even though they have their contract with the SEC, in terms of ratings, is, ecstatic that you've got these two, legendary programs in the game. So.
Yeah. Who do you like?
Well, I think that's obvious. Look, I think it's hard to know which way this game's going to go in terms of what kind of game it becomes.
Yeah. I'm
pretty confident Ohio State wins this game. But I think that it'll be interesting to see whether it's a Oregon-style win or whether it's a Texas-style win. Notre Dame has a very good defense, and they're tough, physical on both sides of the ball, and but I just unless they can force turnovers or score like with a special teams play or something, I don't see them putting up enough points to be able to compete with Ohio State.
When was Notre Dame in the national title before? When was that? Was that 2013?
Yeah, well,
12?
It might even be, I want to say like 10, 11, 12, somewhere around there.
And they
got worked by Notre Dame or by Alabama, yeah.
Are you seeing that happen?
No.
Okay.
No, because I think back then there was a sizable difference between the talent and speed, size, athleticism between Alabama and Notre Dame back then. I think that's evened out. I think Notre Dame has, size and speed, though I still think Ohio State is bigger, stronger, faster than Notre Dame. But not with that level of difference. And so to me what's surprising is, again, Vegas has its own ways, but
what's the spread?
I think it's 9.5. At least that's where it started.
Okay.
So I think that's too high.
Even though, be closer than that.
Well, again, I'm not into the betting thing, but I would not make Ohio State that big of a favorite. But
I'm seeing Ohio State by 8.5.
That's come down then, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that's again, spreads move because people bet heavily in one direction. So we'll see. I think it's Ohio State's game to lose.
Yeah.
And if they don't make self-inflicted mistakes,
or have a competent game plan, right? I mean that's been an issue in some of their games this year.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one being Michigan, but I don't think that'll be an issue this time. I mean, what'll be fascinating is you had all these Texas fans, gloating about how their best cornerback shut down Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State.
With safety help over the top, right? The whole game?
Always.
Yeah.
And oftentimes three players in his area.
Yeah. So, it's kind of like the reverse Revis Island,
Yeah. Yeah, like, good job, Texas. You did shut down Jeremiah Smith, but don't say your, elite corner, who's really good. Like, he won the Thorpe Award as the best cornerback in. Yeah. So I'm not saying he's not good. I'm just saying you can't say he shut him down when they were never in one-on-one coverage. Like, Don't tell me that. So, but here's the thing. Texas consistently plays a lot of zone coverage, which they did against Ohio State. Notre Dame, they don't play much zone. They play a lot of man coverage. And I just wonder how they're going to compete with Ohio State's wide receivers if they do that.
Yeah.
I just don't know how they do that. And that raises the question, if you're a coach, how much do you change who you are in the most important game of the year to try to shut down Ohio State's wide receivers?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, shall we move on to pro football?
Yeah, what's going on there?
So we had a number of playoff games this weekend. So we're recording on Monday. One's still to be played tonight due to, I believe it was scheduled to be played on Sunday or Saturday.
No, it was always Monday.
It was always Monday?
But it was going to be in Los Angeles.
But because of the horrendous fires in Los Angeles, they've moved the game to Arizona,
That's right.
I believe.
Yep.
So, I mean, I could just tick off these games. Surprisingly, I think Houston destroyed the Chargers. That was – I think I expected that game to be a lot closer.
I do too.
I don't think it was unreasonable to pick the Houston Texans to win that game.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it was a Texans home game.
Yeah.
Because of the way the seeding works in the NFL playoffs, where if you win your division, you do get one of the higher seeds.
Yep. And then Baltimore 28-14 over Pittsburgh.
And that was a game that didn't even feel that close, to be honest.
I watched a
little bit of it.
I watched the first half and went like, oh, they can't stop Derrick Henry or Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
It's over.
I mean,
my sense is they took their foot off the gas in the second half.
It was 21-0 at the half.
That's right.
So, yeah.
And then Buffalo against Denver. I think the Bo Nix hopium came back to earth a little bit there. Right, he threw a touchdown. They were up 7-3.
7-0. They took the ball and like hit like a 60-yard touchdown pass.
Yeah,
and it's like, whoa, hey, Denver's gonna make this a game.
And then Josh Allen and his compatriots blew through them. So
yeah.
So that was 31-0. The Eagles beat the Packers.
Yes,
I think. It was interesting to think through, like, oh, how good is the NFC North? You know, they have three teams in the playoffs, and Packers got bounced pretty easily.
Yes.
And then Washington over Tampa Bay.
A little bit of a surprise there.
Well, rookie quarterback. I don't believe a rookie quarterback has won a playoff game since Mark Sanchez.
No, C.J. Stroud won one last year.
He did. Okay. I was going back to Sanchez there.
I mean, it's
a rare thing.
It's something that doesn't happen very often. That's correct.
So C.J. Stroud, Mark Sanchez, and what's this guy's name?
Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels. I just want to make sure. The rare air right there. Rare air.
Yeah, though you can make the case that Tampa Bay gave that game away.
Sure.
I mean, they had still to capitalize.
They had to hit the field goal at the end of the game.
But
the doinker.
Yes, but I mean, Washington was down. I forget. I think it was 17-13. Got down inside the 5. Went for it on fourth down. Didn't convert, and then like 2 plays later, Baker Mayfield fumbles and gives the ball right back to Washington. They score to go up.
How do you think Baker Mayfield's career continues to go as a pro?
It's a wild ride.
It's been fun. It's been weird.
It's been very weird.
Because he's so outspoken and so confident, and then will play really well.
Yeah, he'll have flashes where he's terrific, but then you can just kind of have to bake in at some point he's going to make a bonehead play.
Yeah.
Some point in
Baker.
there.
I like that.
And, I mean, you saw the field goal, the winning field goal, hit the upright and went in.
Yeah.
And did you see some of the clips of the kicker on the sideline? Like they showed him like he looked like he was the most nervous kid you've ever seen in your life. Like he's like messing with his hair and he's like, just like he looks like he's scared to death to walk out there. And he hit it, doinked it in.
Yeah. And I saw one tweet of him standing back, getting ready to kick, and his body language was a little funny as he's standing back there. Like he just didn't look prepared to kick the ball.
100%.
And put it through. Okay, next round. Just real quick. Kansas City, Houston, who do you like?
Kansas City. Hard to go against them.
Same. Baltimore at Buffalo.
Man.
That's a tough one. That's going to be a fun game.
I just don't trust Lamar Jackson in the playoffs, so I'm going to go Buffalo.
You're going to go Buffalo.
Are you going Buffalo there?
I'll take Baltimore.
Okay.
I'll take
Even
Baltimore.
though you picked the Bills to go to the Super Bowl.
I did pick the Bills to go to the Super Bowl, didn't I? I'll take the Bills.
Okay.
Washington, Detroit.
Detroit.
Okay. And then the final game it's Philadelphia against somebody.
I'm guessing the Vikings will come out of that.
Okay.
So, and I didn't get your pick on the college football.
I think Ohio State's going to win.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. At some point, I mean, we're football heavy, but when we get past a little bit of football here, we're going to have to talk about some NBA and the Cavaliers.
They continue to play well.
They're tearing it up, but we don't have time for that today. What we do have time for today is our main topic. And we're going to talk about another podcast, which we occasionally do, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose so.
We're going to talk about Joe Rogan's podcast, the Joe Rogan Experience, I believe.
Yeah.
Now, we should probably both acknowledge that, well, I've never listened to an episode until this one we're going to talk about.
This was probably my second, maybe my third episode.
Okay. I mean, I've seen very small clips on social media and that sort of thing because he has a lot of prominent people on his podcast. So
yeah. And the format of the podcast, my sense is they don't do editing, and it's just sort of a 3-hour conversation.
Yes, that's my sense too.
3-hour plus conversation.
Yeah, with the occasional ad read in there that they just throw in.
Oh, that was one of my reflections. Something out of that was just like I was
mid-sentence practically.
Yes. They did not have good transition from them speaking to ad read.
Yeah.
And it was a little jarring.
Yeah.
And I thought he was like...
Yeah, mid-sentence you're talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls, and you're like, don't forget that DraftKings has a special on...
And I just kept going like, why is he bringing this in? Oh, this is an ad.
Yeah.
And then it was funny, like there were ads. There was probably 25 minutes of ads in the podcast because it's just so long. Mm-hmm. And it felt like there were times where it was so quick, like we'd have an ad and then we'd go back to a conversation and there'd be another ad. Yeah. And then it felt like there were times where we'd go like half hour, 45 minutes without an ad.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of ads. That was one reflection I had coming out of that.
Again, a 3.5 hour show.
And I suppose that's how you make a ton of money he has off. I think he's making money off that. I'm sure he's making
a ton of money. His deal with Spotify, I think, was massive in terms of So it's either the most listened to podcast in the world, or it might have fallen to second now. We're talking like tens of millions of listeners.
Did you know who Joe Rogan was before this podcast?
You mean before this episode, or just in general? Like,
his podcast is sort of like well known.
Yeah.
Right. Did you know him before that? Before he started podcasting?
He was a comedian, right?
He's a comedian, and he did UFC.
Yeah.
He was the UFC guy.
Okay. I think I knew that. I think I knew vaguely of him.
Mm-hmm.
But
And I always want to say he was the Fear Factor guy, but I don't think he was. I think that was somebody else.
No, I think it was somebody else, but he kind of looks like him.
I get the two of them confused. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the reason we're talking about this is because he had a guest on last week named Wesley Huff, who I had never heard of.
I've never heard of Wesley Huff,
before this. But, what's fascinating is so Wesley Huff is essentially an apologetics guy. He has a sort of apologetics ministry. He's the Central Canada Director for Apologetics Canada, and is currently doing a PhD in New Testament at the University of Toronto's Wycliffe College.
Now, tell me about University of Toronto, because University of Toronto comes up from time to time. What's the lay of the land up there? Because I would think University of Toronto would sort of not be a place for a conservative theologian to go.
Well, but Wycliffe College
Is pretty conservative?
has at least a conservative-ish lean.
Okay.
Where you're not going to be surprised to find conservative evangelical faculty as well as students there.
Okay.
So
because I know who's gone to University of Toronto. Did Gentry go there?
That could be. I don't remember.
Okay. Did Dempster go there?
No, I think he went somewhere else in Canada.
Okay.
So, but anyway, I was not familiar with him until this point, and it's interesting. I mean, we're not going to go through obviously the whole 3.5 hour episode.
It would take us 6 weeks.
I mean, in the interest of full disclosure, I did not listen to the whole thing, but I read the transcript of the whole thing.
Okay.
So, I mean, 3.5 hours is a lot. I listened to probably over an hour of it, hour plus.
When you text me about it, I was getting ready to drive home, and I was just like, let's just listen to it.
Yeah.
And I listened to it on the way home, when I did dishes that night, and on the way in the next morning.
Yeah.
And
well, you've got a 55-minute commute each way. I mean, that's almost 2 hours in the car each day.
Yep. So, and then maybe on the ride home after that to polish it off. But
yeah. So
I did listen to it.
What's interesting is, I mean, the reason that we're talking about it is the fact that Joe Rogan even had somebody like this on.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Joe Rogan has it's an understatement to say he has a wide range of people on his podcast.
Yes.
He is all over the map in terms of guests.
Yes.
I mean, you have, actors, politicians.
He's had Bernie Sanders on.
Like conspiracy theorist guys.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
so he's run the gamut. I mean, during the presidential election, he had Donald Trump on, and I think he tried or invited Kamala Harris to be on it, and that didn't work out for whatever reason. But in any case, he has a wide range, and the fact that you've got this clearly evangelical individual on there having a 3.5 hour discussion that ranged from topics including, like we're not just talking about very general Christian kind of topics. We're talking like granular level textual criticism, Dead Sea Scrolls, ancient Near East backgrounds, kind of stuff, as well as, Gospels, who is Jesus, all these kinds of things.
Should the Sphinx be restored?
Yeah. Yeah. So
which I didn't even know was a thing. Like, I didn't even know that was a controversy.
Yeah, I didn't either. But a little backstory. What's interesting is here's how this Wesley Huff got on Joe Rogan's radar. Apparently, Wesley Huff debated an atheist named Billy Carson.
Do you know who Billy Carson is?
I don't.
Okay. So,
but apparently Joe Rogan did.
Yes. And Billy Carson was running around apparently saying, no one will debate me. No one – he's this – I wouldn't even call him prominent because I think I know who the prominent atheists are.
Yeah.
But sort of the atheist influencers, if there's such a thing.
Yeah.
He's running around saying, no evangelical will debate me because they all lose.
Yeah.
They know they'll lose. And I think the story goes is that there's a third-party podcaster who I had never heard of who invited Billy on and said, well, what if I could find you somebody to debate?
Yeah.
And found this Wesley guy.
Yeah. I think knew him already.
Perhaps knew him already, and invited him on like last minute. Like he had less than 24 hours to prepare for this.
Yeah.
And I think Wesley was familiar with Billy and some of the arguments he would make.
Yeah.
And according to Joe Rogan, even according to Wesley, I think Wesley downplays it maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But just kind of exposed this guy, made him look very, very foolish.
Yeah.
And this Billy, what's his name, Billy Carson, responds with like cease and desist lawsuits and
trying to suppress the audio or video, I can't remember, maybe both, of the actual debate.
That's right. And And I think Wesley a Canadian,
Yeah.
just kind of went like, "Come and get me," like I'm in Canada. That's going to be so insurmountable for you.
Yeah.
That's going to be so difficult to sue me from the United States.
Yeah.
Like, come and get me.
Yeah.
And then because he sends out these letters, and I think Wesley himself took pictures of the lawsuit documents and posted them to X.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan saw this, was blown away, and invited Wesley on.
Yeah.
Right? Is that a fair summation?
That sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I think that's good background there. Let's talk a little bit about the interview itself. What stood out to you about the interview?
Let's see. That Joe Rogan's just an interesting guy. Like
I think he's a very good interviewer.
I think it depends on the topic that he's speaking of.
Okay, so maybe my exposure is just so limited. I think in this he did a good job.
I think he did a really good job in this.
Okay,
I think when he gets like aliens are coming to Earth to like suck it. And again, I have not listened to those episodes. I've just heard criticisms of Joe Rogan where people go like, he's throwing them nothing but softballs and asking them no critical questions.
Yeah,
I thought he did a really good job in this, and I thought Wesley did a really good job.
Yeah, yeah. I think regardless of what you think of Joe Rogan, and we should probably warn, there's some salty language.
Joe Rogan is not an evangelical or have the values of an
Now Wesley Huff is not out there, cussing like a sailor. But
swearing or smoking weed on Joe Rogan's podcast, which is something Joe Rogan has done.
Yeah. Yeah. But what stands out to me is I think just in general, I think Joe Rogan is a very curious individual.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair.
And that curiosity, I think, comes out in the way that he interviewed Wesley Huff. Like he showed legitimate curiosity about the things that Wesley Huff was talking about. And I just think
clearly had done some research on his own to know the topics.
He'd said that he had watched hours of some of Wesley Huff's videos from his website that, he's got videos up there of, can you trust the Bible? And I went to Huff's website and, you look at his like resource section on it where he's recommending like, here are articles about different topics. He's linking to people that are evangelicals in terms of these articles. So I mean, it's, and he's elsewhere come out on Twitter and said, "Yeah, I'm a Calvinist." I mean, So I mean, it's just fascinating to me that he ends up on this show, and I was also struck by, and this is where I think we can learn some lessons. He was not afraid to say, "I don't know."
Yeah.
Like there were a number of times where Rogan would ask him kind of tangential question, or like even like with this Egyptology stuff and the pyramids, and Wesley's like, I'm not an Egyptologist, so I don't know.
You're gonna have to ask an archaeologist that.
Yeah, like I'm not an archaeologist. Like I have friends who are archaeologists, and I've heard them say this, but that's not my specialty. Like linguistics, language, some of those things. Ancient languages is kind of where my sweet spot is, and textual criticism and that sort of stuff. But I want to ask, do you think that this says anything about our cultural moment, that someone like Wesley Huff, an evangelical, knowledgeable apologist, gets a 3.5-hour interview on the most listened to podcast? Does that say anything?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think time will tell. I'm trying to decide, is this going to be like the new normal where Christian academics are going to have a moment and sort of? I
doubt that.
I doubt it too. I think that's why I'm like, is this sort of the new normal? And maybe Christian academics are getting 1% of the pie or 1% of the attention right now, and maybe they get 3% of the pie or 3%. Is that what this indicates? Or are we sort of having a free speech, liberal academic sort of moment, and this is sort of a part of that, and in 3 to 5 years, we're just going to kind of go back to the status quo with less craziness out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's certainly possible.
So I don't know. I feel like I need to wait. I feel like I need to see what happens.
Yeah.
Now, if Joe Rogan has Tom Schreiner on to discuss the breakdown of the Book of Romans, that would be wild to me. And
that would be crazy.
And
yes.
Tom with his tea right there, and breaking down.
I can't even fathom that.
Then I think I would be like, this may say something culturally big time.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I'm at. I think I'm waiting and seeing, is this sort of a new normal, or is this just sort of a moment in the sun sort of moment?
Yeah, I think I'm interested just in the fact of that you have someone like a Wesley Huff who I was impressed with how he used his expertise and was able to communicate often complicated and nuanced things in a way that Joe Rogan could follow for the non-specialist.
Yeah.
And I've seen people nitpick at things he said. Of course, all of the actually folks come out on Twitter and okay. He wasn't perfect. You put anybody in a 3.5-hour interview, you're probably going to make a mistake somewhere in there. Say something slightly off or misremember something but
I like that he had the facsimiles for him. That was cool.
That was very cool.
He handed them that gift. That was very cool. I would like one.
I would too. So Wesley, if you're listening. I think it's refreshing to see someone with expertise being taken seriously, but also not feeling like they have to overstep their boundaries and be like, well, I'm an expert on everything. Well, no, I'm not. I'm an expert in this little narrow area of this. And when you ask me questions about this, I can answer a lot of details that the average person probably can't.
Yeah.
And I think it's also an indirect, not every pastor is going to be able to do that. Not every pastor should go after a PhD by any means. But it does show the value of getting quality theological education that ranges across the board, right? And that's what a good Master's of Divinity does.
Yeah.
Is it gives you good quality grasp on things like, well, here's some church history, and here's theology courses, and here's hermeneutics, and here's Greek, and here's Hebrew, and here's, of course, also practical ministry training as well. All those things I think come together in a good Master's of Divinity.
Sure.
And you've got his master's training. He got a Master's of Theological Studies from Tyndale.
Yeah.
So
I'll turn that question on you. Is this a significant cultural moment?
Yeah, I think you have to take a wait and see kind of thing. I think it'll be interesting. If there are I think you need to see it in other media platforms before you start to say this is a trend.
Yeah.
I think some of it is riding on the wave of a backlash against, and I'm not a huge fan of this term, but I'll use it for now, about the woke movement of,
Yeah.
I feel like there is a backlash towards that culturally now. And I think you see that in the corporate world with more and more corporations turning away from DEI initiatives and other things. And I think
Facebook over the weekend.
Yeah. I think you're seeing that more broadly in a cultural sense. So this could easily just sort of fall into that category of, oh, we're willing to listen now maybe to somebody who has views that a year ago, 2 years ago, we would have been like, oh, you're a bigot because you think traditional marriage is sacrosanct and and like those sorts of things. So
yeah,
we'll see. I don't know. I just think
I did see somebody online, and I won't name this person, but I did see somebody online go like, oh my goodness, look, he's not trying to be winsome. He's not, and it was the winsome criticism.
Yeah.
And I just went, actually, I think he was pretty winsome in that interview.
Yeah. I think the criticism there, though, is more of the I agree with you that some of the criticism of being winsome is just silly, as if the mark of being a Christian is being an arrogant jerk.
Yes, and I did not find him to be a
No.
sort of shove my truth in your face sort of guy.
No, but he was still very clear and direct. He was
Yes.
not mealy-mouthed. He was not equivocating. And I think that's what some of that criticism gets at, is that for some in the winsomeness at all costs kind of approach, there can be the appearance, at least, I think some of that's reality, not always, but of being unwilling to say clear, direct, no, the Bible says that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible condemns that. That there's a unwillingness because of wanting some measure of cultural acceptability to be hesitant to be direct on certain things. I think that's the criticism. And I think what you saw is, in this interview, someone who was still very direct.
Sure, yeah.
But winsome in the sense of not being a jerk,
Oh,
showing
yeah.
respect, asking questions. And he was also, I would say, I mean, Joe Rogan, he just wanders all over the place. Wesley was pretty good about
Steering him back.
bringing him back
Yeah.
in, using conversational transitions to like, well, let's get back to who Jesus is, or like, just being able to move back into areas. And he was
And asking him the question. I appreciated the question at the end of the interview. Who do you say Jesus is?
Yeah.
Right? That's not the exact words he used, but did ask him that. And,
Yeah. And even taking an opportunity to distinguish his understanding of who Jesus is from Jordan Peterson,
Yeah.
who is, has a massive following in our culture.
Sure.
And is very, hey, I respect Jesus. I like the Bible. I'm not a Christian. I thought that was very interesting that he went out of his way to distinguish, the Jesus of Jordan Peterson is a moral example, and that's not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
We need something more than a moral example.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Jordan Peterson's is very much kind of a mainline understanding of who Jesus is, right?
Yeah.
Right. We need to take the miracles. We need to take the divinity out of Jesus, but we need the foundation, the moral foundation.
Mm-hmm.
The way mainlines really began, right, in the 1910s, 1920s.
Yeah.
And I thought Wesley did a good job and was wise to push back against that.
And I just think it's silly. Some of these people are like, well, he didn't really preach the gospel. And what they mean by that is he didn't give a 4 laws presentation to Joe Rogan.
Sure.
God loves you, Joe. You're a sinner, Joe. Jesus died for you, Joe. Will you accept him as your Lord and Savior? Like, it's like some of these criticisms are so like narrow in terms of like he made it clear who Jesus is.
Yeah.
And he made it clear that Joe needs a Savior.
Mm-hmm.
And that none of us can live up to what God commands us to live up to.
Yeah.
And I just think, some of this is just silly. Like, well, you didn't present. Like, stop it. Just, some of this armchair quarterbacking is just silliness to me. Like, you really think you would have done better in that 3.5 hours? And it just seems silliness. But
Yeah.
we'll see.
It was a good conversation.
It
for
was,
sure.
and
It was
certainly
fun.
worth listening with that. Without content warning in terms of some salty language from Joe Rogan in there.
Yep.
I think it's an interesting listen. And we will put a link to the transcript. So if you don't want to listen to it, you can just kind of skim through the transcript and see. That's still a long transcript. It's 3.5 hours, man. So
Yeah, I don't know how you did it. Because he's so all over the place.
Yeah.
It makes sense in a conversation to be all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Reading it would just be difficult for me.
yeah, well,
You read professionally, though.
I do read professionally, and part of my PhD training was essentially having to learn. I need to consume large amounts of information very quickly to be able to determine, is this relevant to me? Do I need this for my research or not? So, those PhD skills kick in.
Yeah.
All right, time now for this day in sports history.
All right, this day in sports history, January the 14th, 2025.
Halfway through January, basically.
Yep. 1968 Super Bowl II at the Orange Bowl in Miami, Florida. Green Bay Packers beat the Oakland Raiders 33-14. MVP is Bart Starr, the quarterback of Green Bay.
Yeah, John Madden, the coach of the Oakland Raiders at that point.
Really? I did not know that. 68.
Yeah.
I suppose that makes sense. 1973 Super Bowl. We're getting into a lot of Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Early Super Bowl. Super Bowl 7.
Well, I mean, it just shows you how different the NFL schedule is now. The Super Bowl is February 9th this year, is that right?
That sounds right, yeah.
Man, so late.
Super Bowl 7 at the L.A. Coliseum, Los Angeles, California. Miami Dolphins beat the Washington Redskins 14-7. MVP is Jake Scott, the Miami safety.
That's the famous game where the Miami kicker, there was a famous messed up exchange on the field goal attempt, and I think his name was Garo Yepremian or something like that. Picked up the ball as the kicker, tried to throw it, ended up being intercepted by Washington run back for a touchdown.
Oh, goodness. 1993, Utah Jazz center Mark Eaton blocks 2 shots.
You skipped 75.
I did, excuse me. 1975, excuse me. Well, should I just get through the 93? I'm like halfway through it. And I'll go back to 75. 1975, 25th NBA All-Star Game. Arizona Vets Memorial Coliseum in Phoenix. East beats West 108-102. MVP Walt Frazier, Knicks point guard.
Yeah. Notice the score, 108-102.
Well, if Walt Frazier was in that game, he's playing some defense.
Well, and it tells you they actually played basketball.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't just this sort of playground.
162 to 145. Yeah.
Yeah. I threw it in there because your boy Walt Frazier.
Yes, Clyde Frazier. I love on Twitter they post what he's wearing that night to the game because he does the broadcast for the Knicks. Right. And boy, he is interesting.
A bit of a flamboyant dresser.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We won't get into what he'd be mistaken for on the street. But 93, Utah Jazz center Mark Eaton blocks 2 shots in a 96-89 win over the Seattle Supersonics, becomes only the second player in NBA history, along with Kareem, to record 3,000 career blocks.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of blocks.
That is.
Oh, boy. 1994, Ina Laskovecka.
Lasovskaya.
That's what I said. Triple jumps, ladies' world record, 14.61 meters.
Yeah. Okay. I have a sense of where you're going with this one.
Do you? I'd probably go Mark Eaton.
Really? You're not going to go with your boy Walt Frazier?
I mean, it's an all-star game, you know?
Okay. I like that. He was a huge human being. We should ask. We had a student with the last name Eaton here, recently graduated. We should ask if there's any sort of.
It's a pretty common last name, right?
Probably. All right. One thing you liked.
I did Christmas with my family in the last 2 weeks. Got a new goat skin Bible.
Nice.
So very excited to. Took it to church on Sunday. It's got good pages, good feel, good page feel.
Yeah.
Do you have a goatskin Bible? I
do.
Do you like it?
I actually have 2. Yeah, both are ESVs. A little different, but yours is ESV as well? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good feel to it.
Yeah, man. Nothing quite like a good goatskin Bible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So, yeah, I'm glad. That's good. Is that going to be your regular use Bible? You're kind of a multi-Bible guy.
I am. I try to keep a Bible in each location. I think that's going to be my church Bible and my preaching Bible.
Okay.
I think it's what it is. When I'm reading in the morning, I have a Bible that doesn't have the verse numbers in it that I like to read from. Has the chapter numbers, but not the verse numbers. So it's a little easier to work your way through. And then I keep I think it's a CSB in my office that I can run a chapel or a meeting with if I need it, or class or whatever.
Okay. Multi-Bible, multi-translation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the ESV. I'm a fan.
Okay.
I like the Christian Standard as well.
Okay. Yeah. I do too. Yeah. I'm going to go with on Friday night just for the Ohio State game. It was fun to have both my boys there for the game, And a little bit of a wrinkle. I'll try to keep this brief because we're running long. So my son, John, who lives in Indianapolis, recently reconnected with a guy who we knew from our days in Chicago.
Okay.
And basically, he's like he's probably 3 years younger, 4 years younger than John, a year younger than Jake. And we kind of lost touch with them and that family. And he graduated from Michigan State, got a job down in Indianapolis at the JW Marriott.
Oh, nice.
And didn't really know anyone down in the Indianapolis area. And then managed to reconnect with my son John through Insta.
Oh, nice.
And he brought this friend of his that we knew when he was like little, like basically when he was born, up to the house to see. And he was part of that gang as well, watching the game. Even though he's went to Michigan State, he was rooting for Ohio State, embraced the Ohio State fandom. So just fun, weird sort of like, okay, I knew you when you were literally like born and my wife potty trained you. That's weird, but hey, fun to see him. And he's grown up to be a great young man.
Nice.
So that was my one thing I liked. All right, John, we have talked Ohio State making the national championship game.
Talked a lot of football.
We did. We have talked about Wesley Huff appearing on the Joe Rogan podcast. We'll put a link to his website as well.
I think we get Wesley Huff on our podcast.
We can try if we want. We have talked about Mark Eaton blocking a lot of shots. We've talked about your new goatskin Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about hanging out with my boys for the Ohio State game and reconnecting with an old friend. And so I think by definition, we have covered our various and sundry topics. And so all that's left to say is, until next time, the Lord bless y'all real good.
Later.